Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, No One Left, UA Civil War Vigilante, Lazycatkami. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin No One Left, UA Civil War Vigilante, Izuku's POV rules. Rules. That's what defines this world. Everything followed rules. He understood that, from a young age. No hard feelings there. After all, he was defined by his own rules. He just wished that other people wouldn't define him by their own rules. Rules were his pair of shackles for him. Something he could never break free from. No matter how hard he tried. No matter how hard he cried. No matter what he did. They were always there. A gleaming pair of words and opinions surrounding his wrists. Holding him down. Holding him back. His rules were enough. He thought. Enough for him. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't watch your mother cry at your father's funeral. It's better to look away. Don't look at people's faces as they say their goodbyes. Tune out their empty words. Don't remember that night he died. Don't remember watching your mother waking up from her deep sleep as a villain escapes out their bedroom window. Don't watch her choke on her own screams and his as she awakens. Don't watch as the police arrive. Don't. Close your eyes, close your ears. Don't hate the world, hate leads to more misfortune. No, those weren't rules. The rules came later. Those came from his personal experience. Flashback, Mommy. The poor green-haired boy shouted, trying to get his mother to listen to him. Mommy. I'm so excited. What quirk do you think I'll get? I'll use it to save people. Just like All Might. His mother's blank face scared him and he shouted again. With a flinch she looked at him and smiled fondly. Her eyes leak tears as she reaches down and grabs his hands in hers. They were in the waiting room at the doctor's. She was yet to get over her husband's death. She would be strong again. For him and her son. She owed it to them after all. Her face hardened with resolve. She would protect her baby. Oh, Aizu. She whispers fondly. I'll be happy with whatever you get. The little boy laughs and with a sigh, his mother lets go of his hands and thinks. At least something is going in the right direction for us. Inko Midoriya and Izuku Midoriya. A nurse calls. They stand up and she smiles kindly down at the green-haired boy. Are you ready? He nodded vigorously and she smiles again, will then follow me. They followed her into the doctor's room. Inko watches as the doctor examines Izuku. His facial expression twitches and she braces herself for her son's results. He starts and clears his throat before turning to Inko. I'm sorry, your son doesn't have a quirk. Inko's heart dropped in her chest. Her son didn't have a quirk. But his dream of becoming a hero. Izuku was still smiling and humming. Inko takes a deep breath. I understand. Is there anything we can no? The doctor says. But me and my late husband both had a quirk, so no. The doctor says again. I'm sorry, your son is quirkless and there are no signs of him getting a quirk ever. Now please exit this room as quickly as you can, I have more important patients waiting. His voice was edgy and he kept fidgeting every time he looked at Izuku. Inko glares at the doctor before standing up and staring down at the doctor. Izuku bounced up in his chair as he stood up. So what quirk did I get? He asks, his brain wasn't really there. He was too busy daydreaming about being a hero with his awesome quirk that he didn't pay attention. Inko crouches down in front of her son and looks him in the eye before swallowing hard, with a pained voice she says. I'm sorry, Izuku. You don't have a quirk. But what about my dream? Of becoming a hero. Give up on it. The doctor says, turning around in his chair to face his computer. You'll die. Inko swallows her anger and refrains herself from hitting the man. With a deep breath she tells him, just you wait. He'll show you, my son will become the greatest hero ever. The doctor barks a sharp laugh and stands up. He's shorter than Inko, but it feels like they're leagues apart. He points to the door. Good luck on that. Just outside of the room, and after hearing the door click shut behind her, Inko squats down and looks at her stunned son in the eye. Aizu. She says softly. Aizu, look at me. He looks at her and she smiles. Aizu, you don't need power to be a hero. You're already my hero. I believe that you can be everyone's hero too. He smiles softly and she holds her tears back as she says, Aizu, don't ever give up on your dream. You have to believe that anything is attainable as long as you want to attain it. He nods seriously and Inko stands back up. The nurse from earlier was standing there the entire time and Inko blushes, worried that she had overheard everything. I'm sorry, they both say at the same time. Inko looks at her and the nurse says. I overheard everything, that your son is quirkless. Inko gives her the so what, and the nurse gulps. I just wanted to come and say that that what? That he could still be a hero. Inko stands there stunned. How did you know? The nurse flushes again. The entire time you were waiting your son was saying how excited he was to get his quirk and be the best hero. Like All Might. Inko starts, but Izuku darts from her side, letting go of her hand and hugs the nurse. The nurse smiles softly and whispers. I've always wanted kids. The lady kindly leads them back to the entrance. Just as Inko and Izuku were about to enter the car, Inko remembers that she left her phone in the doctor's office. Izuku, stay here. She orders as he gets in the car. She locks the car to be safe and without waiting for her son's reply, she sprints back in to get her phone. As she rushes through the automatic door she tries hard to remember the way to the office. After a couple of wrong turns and a couple of suspicious glances from the staff, she finally makes it to the doctor's office and without knocking, because he deserves that, she opens the door. Inko enters the room just as she sees a villain with a long bludgeon swinging right at her head. The doctor was already dead, slumped against the wall. There was red splattered everywhere. Her eyes widen as she takes in the masked villain as she sees the weapon zoom towards her forehead. 1100 words, ish, I lost count, lol, why How was it, IDK? Comments. Things you didn't like. How are you doing? LMAO Izuku's POV, don't forget what your mother said. Hey, I'm back, moahaha. Since I just started this, I'll do as many updates as I can because why not? /0v0, Izuku was at his school. It has been 11 years since his mother died. 11 more years he existed without her. Midoriya. His teacher said, drawing his attention back to class. He flushes pink and stammers. Yeah. Yeah. The teacher glares at him. If you want to go to UA then you better pay more attention in class. I was just saying that 2 students were applying to UA. You are applying, right? And so is Katsuki. The poor boy flushes again, this time from anger. Yeah, I've applied for UA. Ha. A certain blonde, spiky-haired boy cackles with laughter. Shitty Deku wants to get into UA. The rest of the class laughs, treating Izuku like a joke. Just in time the end of the school bell rings. The teacher sighs and leaves the classroom. As he leaves he manages to throw Izuku a cold smirk. Bakugo crosses the room towards where Izuku was trying to pack up as quickly as he could. As Izuku tried to put his journal number 13 into his backpack, Bakugo grabs it and blasts it out of the classroom. With his small mini explosion noises coming from his hands he advances towards Izuku. Izuku watches, eyes wide as his notebook, in all its burn and flaming glory, smash into the window and shatter it before continuing to fall. Oi! The other boy screams in front of his face. Izuku shivers as Bakugo puts his exploding hand near Izuku's face. Drop out. From what? Izuku asks. From UF know what I mean. Izuku takes a deep breath and Bakugo grabs his wrist before launching him towards the front blackboard. He hits the wall with his back and there's a loud thud before Izuku peels off from the wall and slams face first into the ground. Bakugo picks him up by the collar and presses his sizzling palms on one of Aizu's forearms. It slowly sizzles and burns. Nothing more happens. No emotions from the other poor boy. Bakugo lets out a breath and turns away. If you really want TOBAF hero. His voice quiets down and he looks at his childhood friend with dark eyes. Wish for a quirk and take a swan dive off a roof. You'll be saving everyone that way. Izuku shudders as Bakugo exits the classroom with his friends, Izuku's other tormentors. As he slowly goes down the stairs and towards the entrance of the school, his teacher passes by from the teacher lounge and stops him. With an innocent look this devilish man says, Midoriya, maybe no. This time Izuku speaks firmly. I'm not giving up. Not yet. Not ever. He marches past his teacher and stops to get his shoes before sprinting out around the back of the school to get to his notebook. Kaken. No. Not Kaken. Bakugo. That idiot. How could he dash? I dash. What? As he grabs his 13th notebook on heroes, he groans at all the burn marks. All his hard work was ruined. By his stupid childhood friend. I'm going to kill Dash. He couldn't. He wasn't a villain. Like that man who had murdered his father. Plus, there were certain rules that he, Izuku, couldn't break. Like he said, shackles be shackling. Hashtag quirkless people don't fight back. Hashtag don't talk back. Hashtag you are nothing. Believe it. Relieve it. Hashtag anything. Anything. Can happen to you and you can't do anything. Hashtag no one will believe you so don't talk to people. Hashtag give up. You can't be a hero. No actually. You're not allowed to be a hero. There were so many more rules for being quirkless. It was as if by being different. By being less. Society too deemed you as a person less. He starts walking back home to the orphanage, still deep in thought and he passes under a bridge. He walks by a manhole and as Izuku passes it, a green slime-like thing slithers out. Hee-yi-yi. It says in a laid-back way as slowly engulfs Izuku. MPHFPHFPFHFPFHFPFF, Izuku mumbles. His notebook is on his floor and the slime thing is slowly choking him. MPHSPFHSPFHWPSPP. He slowly gasps trying to breathe but every time he tries to draw air in, slime slowly slides down his throat. He can only GG from practice so many times. As his vision slowly fades to dark black, Izuku breathes in a gasp of fresh air. But that was a joke, right? A CK. Could they be joking? Was the author duping everyone? No. It wasn't. All Might's POV there's a young man laying on the floor. He looks alive. I hope. I'm not sure. I rush over to the young man after I bottle the slime villain and start slapping his face. Come on, come on. I mutter. With a gasp the poor boy sits up and bonks his head with mine. His black hair looks green on closer glance and his clear green eyes widen as they take in me. I am here. I declare loudly. He flinches from something and then beams at me. I take in the 4 freckles on both sides of his face. The burns on his arms worries me. I better remember what he looks like, in case I ever need to report abuse. All Might. The boy exclaims and jumps to his feet. I am here. I declare again. He yelps and runs around me looking for something. With a sly grin, I pull his notebook from my pocket and show it to him. I am here. And I have signed your notebook. I exclaim. Oh my gods! The boy starts as he stares at his paper with goggling eyes. I turn away from the boy and start preparing for my jump to the police station. Wait! The boy says just as I do my last squat. I will now be going to turn in the villain. See you later, young man. I scream as I jump into the air. I zip safely through the air and make sure that the slime goo man, whatever it was still in my pocket. It was. But there was another green thing attached to my leg. Young man. I scream as we slowly lose altitude and fall towards a roof. That was why I couldn't jump as far. Well, that and my cough problem cough. I managed to safely land on the roof and grab the young man by his collar to lift him up to my eye level. He winces and flinches as I do so, and I take note of that. What do you think you're doing? I ask. We could have died. No, you could have died. What? I'm sorry, sorry. The boy stammers. I just had to ask you something. What could be so important that you almost killed yourself and me? Me. The #1 hero of Japan. The boy blushes and looks at me, without really looking at me. I just wanted to ask if you thought that quirkless people could be heroes. I freeze and stare at him. Are you quirkless, my boy? No. He stammers and blushes. It's just, my friend. He really wants to become a hero. But he's quirkless. Well then, I say. Tell that young man no. He can't be a hero. There's really no hope for him. The young man asks, his voice quivering. Even if it's his dream. Yes. It's too dangerous for quirkless people. They'll die or they'll be in the way of other heroes who have to wait up or save them. It's dangerous for others too. Tell your friend that he can dream. But tell him to remember to dream something that is attainable. I say, my voice finalizing everything. Now I must go and deliver this TO-CUE intense cough. Izuku's POV. All Might was about to leave and deliver the villain to the police when he started coughing. Why? Did he catch a cold? OMG, can a hero catch a cold? Can a pro #1 hero, my idol, All Might catch a cold? 1240 words-ish, haha. 2 updates in a day. Although no one really has read this yet. LMAO, grinning face with sweat. Anyways, I'll try to do good. Tell me anything that you find weird, please. Please. Why am writing this? I forgered. Hahaha, I'll try to update soon, but we'll see. Smiley face. BTW. Aizu is still a small innocent bean. Izuku's POV. Izuku had just asked his hero and his idol if quirkless people could be heroes. His hero had said no. Out of nowhere, Izuku's idol started coughing and hacking up. Like a cat. What was going on? He hacked once more before there was a flash of smoke. Was it karma for saying no? For shooting down someone's dream? Izuku sadistically hoped so. Izuku blinked, trying to clear the air, all the while muttering, All Might. Are you okay? Did something happen? Did you catch a cold? As the smoke cleared in the winds, he sees a skinny man in the place of the great All Might. He's skinny, has blonde hair, electric blue eyes and absolutely no meat or muscle on him. Izuku slowly backs away from him. Who are you? And what did you do with All Might? The man's voice is raspy and totally different from All Might as he sinks to the floor with his back on the railing. Relax, young man. The man says. How could he relax in a situation like this? Was this a joke? Was this man a scam? What about his dream of being a hero? Was he duped just like that? I am All Might. Why? No, you can't be All Might. Izuku says with a frown. All Might isn't a skinny, weird-looking guy like you. He's strong, buff, and has saved so many people. He's my hero. I would know. And he wouldn't say things like, quirkless people shouldn't be heroes. Young man. The All Might says before coughing again, I am the real All Might. It's just that the public doesn't know about my real appearance. Imagine if they knew I was like this. What do you think would happen? You know right. The world would be thrown out of the peace we have. There would be more villains. So you're always like this? Izuku asks. All Might nodded. It was because 5 years ago, I fought a man. It was a hard battle. He was a strong battle, he was strong. He had supporters. It was an intense battle. It was long. At the end I won the fight, of course, in the end, or you wouldn't see me here, but I was heavily injured. Here. All Might lifted his shirt to show his scar on his abdomen. It was purple and dented inwards. Kind of gruesome if you ask Izuku. So you're like that? Izuku asks. Can you still be a hero? Can I still be a hero? The wound affected my body, but my quirk saved my hero career. I can still be a hero, but for a little amount of time per day now. I'm slowly losing my time limit. Soon I won't be able to be a hero anymore. And the world will lose this All Might. Izuku stares at his idol in shock and watches as the older man slowly stands up and returns to his buff form. Until then I'll continue being a hero, I'll never give up. You can still be a hero, huh? Even when you told me that I couldn't be a hero. Please keep this a secret. I know the public can't know about my situation. I can't let Japan and the world relapse into the dark times of before. You understand, right? If the world figures out about my condition, the villains, they'll gain confidence. They'll slowly return, more and more of them. He stares at Izuku and he nods. I'll be going now. All Might finishes accordingly. I have to return this to the police. Izuku continues staring in shock as his idol jumps away. Oh, but don't forget to tell your friend that he can't become a hero. He screams as he jumps away to the police station. He's back to his normal idiot self. Izuku stands there for a couple of more moments staring in shock until he slumps down onto his knees. He said, I can't be a hero. Izuku stares out into the city blankly. Izuku grits his teeth and stands slowly back up. He existed all this way just for his idol to tell him that he couldn't achieve his dream. Why was he still here? Why couldn't he know? His idol, no, his former idol, was a hypocrite. Saying that Izuku couldn't be a hero. That it was too dangerous. What an but. A beach might for sure. Just because Izuku didn't have a quirk didn't mean that he would die any easier. And just because All Might did have a quirk didn't mean that he would never die, especially with his condition that Izuku just found out. And for All Might to still say that Izuku couldn't be a hero. That it was too dangerous for quirkless people to become a hero infuriated Izuku. He would show no proof that anything was possible. That he could do it. His mother's voice tickles his ears. Aizu, don't ever give up on your dream. You have to believe that anything is attainable as long as you want to attain it. He grits his teeth. He would show them all. What it meant to be a hero. What it meant to never give up. What it meant when you let go of all rules. But might POV, I jumped my way to the police station and try not to regret what I had said to the boy on the roof. He looked so crushed. He was a good kid, I decided to care that much for his friend. I wonder who he was. What was his quirk? He looked like he had the drive and kindness to become a hero. I should have asked, or maybe pressured him into going to UA. After all, I would be a teacher there. Maybe he would be my student. Carrot. Maybe my successor. But the boy had a quirkless friend. And that was unacceptable. It was better to distance yourself from quirkless people. They only brought trouble and weakness to others. Dragging down society like that. It was a disgrace. His quirkless friend would only drag that young man down to his doom. Away from the great heights he could have achieved. I understand though. I was quirkless once. But now I'm not, and I truly. I can understand how useless I was. How useless quirkless people are in general. I'm thankful that my MSTR helped me see this. She opened my eyes. Although I sometimes get the nagging feeling that wasn't what she wanted me to feel. No. I was right. Quirkless people were useless. Not helpful. Ugh. I land at the entrance of the police station still deep in thought and then realize something as I dig around my pockets. The bottle. OH, All Might's POVOSHT. I dropped the villain somewhere. Somewhere earlier. When I was jumping around. From the roof. When that boy clung on my leg. When? No. That wasn't the problem. What I needed to know was where it was now. It was dangerous. I don't want to think about what could be happening to the poor innocent civilians right now. They need my help. There's the familiar screech of sirens somewhere in the distance of the city, and with no better idea, I prepare to jump there. A small Naya could be heard behind me as I start to jump off towards the siren sounds. It was a police officer. Sansa. He was never noticed at all by the deep-in-thought hero. Or he was just plain ignored. Sansa didn't care though. He was glad that it was less work for him to do. I land barely making it to my location before my form gives out and I start coughing again. Into my hands, of course. There's a smear I wipe that off onto my dark pants. Nobody can notice, right? I don't know what to do. I'm here. I'm here. But what can I do? My limit was reached. I couldn't go back to my form anymore. I push through the crowd and stare with wide eyes at the spiky, blonde-haired teen that was struggling in the slime's grasp. The pros who have gathered are trying to attack the slime villain, but it has all fronts of attack covered. This was almost a hostage situation. Momfwastfa. Comes from the boy as a small crackling sounds come from his palms. Was that his quirk? It was strong. Good. But it wouldn't do anything against the slime. What do I do? What were the pros doing? All the civilians watching could clearly see that their attacks and tactics weren't working. We were all just standing here watching the boy slowly suffocate to death. What do I do? As I'm turning away debating whether to call for backup or to push my limit, I see a familiar green-haired kid push through the kid and start sprinting towards the slime and the villain. Izuku's POV. After Izuku's encounter with his ex-idol, he managed to get down from the roof. It was some sort of apartment complex, so that made it awkward, but he managed to get to the ground floor and started walking home. Izuku couldn't afford any more delays, he didn't want Mrs. to be waiting for so long. As Izuku walks home, he passes a large crossing and sees that the road is blocked off. By pulse, tape, a crowd, and, were those pro-heroes? What in the world was going on? A fight. A battle. Between heroes and villains. On instinct Izuku rushes over there and start pushing through the crowd, barely managing to get his analysis notebook out and preparing to take his notes. Except when he reaches the front he freezes from surprise. It's that guy. No, Izuku decided. He really shouldn't decide people's genders like that. It was that thing, whatever it was. That slime thing from earlier. But, didn't All Might have it in his pocket? What happened? It fell out, didn't it? But when, oh. It was him. It was his fault. When he was clinging on to All Might's leg waiting, the villain must have somehow fallen down. The pros weren't able to do anything and their attacks looked peeved and cautious. Was it a hostage situation? Like the situation Izuku was in earlier. Izuku scans the villain and realizes that the slime was holding on to something. A person. Who looked awfully familiar. Was it Bakugo? At that moment Bakugo lifted his head and his crimson-red eyes met Izuku's. Momfwastfa. Bakugo screams. Probably something along the lines of, beat it shitty Deku. What are you looking at? I have this villain under control. But his eyes. Bakugo's eyes, they look like they're calling for help. And as much as Izuku wants to turn away, he can't. After all, being a hero means saving those that need it, right? It wasn't as difficult or complicated as people made it to be. You saved people. No matter who, no matter what they were. You saved people unconditionally. With that thought in mind Izuku darts forward. Even though he's prepared of what he's about to do, he still feels the low swoop of his gut. His anxiety and nerves kicking in. Izuku forgot to make a plan. It didn't matter, he was already moving. His feet flying towards his tormentor. Both of them actually. One of them a bully and one of them a villain. Izuku throws his backpack and then desperately tries to think of the next step. Behind him civilian and hero alike were calling him back. He tunes them out and tries his best to come up with a plan on the fly. Comics. Comics. Sandman. Sandman. He couldn't hold his form when he was mixed with water, right? So what if the same worked for this slime person? If Izuku was right, the villain had the ability to absorb things. So, there. The area was a construction site and Izuku dearly wondered why the villain decided to attack Bakugo here. Maybe he was rudely dropped by an idiot hero and had no choice but to attack here. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. Izuku would use everything he had at his disposal to his advantage. With a swift turn from his charge, he darts to the sand pile and stops with a screech. There's a moment of silence as everyone wonders what the green-haired boy was going to do before there's an intake of drawn breath. They watch in awe as they see in slow motion as Izuku picks up a pile of sand in his hands and chucks it at the slime. It doesn't have to work. Izuku thought. Just to scare the villain and distract it. That small amount of sand would have no impact on the villain. But it's enough. Enough for Bakugo to twist free and for the heroes to close in. Within seconds the pros finish off the fight and has managed to capture the villain. Bakugo is slumped, unconscious, on the floor. He couldn't breathe a single full breath for minutes. He couldn't hold on to reality anymore, and once he managed to break free he had fallen on his face, passing out. The media team closed in on the incident too, filming a video of Bakugo being wheeled into an ambulance by paramedics. Just as they start taking a panorama video and Izuku manages to frantically motion to the camera crew that he didn't want to be shown on TV. He's worried that they won't get the message, but out of some pocket of kindness in the crew's heart they manage to avoid him. He was glad. Izuku walks towards where Bakugo and the villain were and pick up his backpack. Just as he turns around, he sees the face of Pro Hero, Death Arms, Mount Lady, and Kamui Woods. Izuku flinches as they close in on him like a pack of woods and he braces himself to be reprimanded for his rash behavior. He deserved it after all. Of how hoipafeg pufst befupafpi, what I was thinking in the last chapter. My logic just decided to yeet itself out of the window. The slime quirk thing. Yeah. That's just SMTH I made up on the go. I just need to push this story along. So that I can get it moving. Sayz me to readers who don't exist. Yet. Or so I hope. I mean, you guys may never exist and then I'll sound like an insane writer. Like most writers are. Izuku's POV. Izuku holds his backpack limply in his arms as he waits to be reprimanded by the three pro heroes in front of him for his rash actions. Nobody moves as each side eyes each other warily. Maybe the pros were nervous because he was quirkless. Did they even know he was quirkless? Death Arm finally breaks into an easy grin and says, "Great courage out there, my friend. You helped us change the tide of the fight." Mount Lady flashes a flirtatious smile at Izuku and whispers, "Your quirk is so cool. It makes you so smart. Your quirk does have something to do with your intelligence, right?" Izuku flushes because he's a pure and innocent sweet cinnamon roll. Of course he knew that Mount Lady couldn't help it. That was just the way she was. Though what she said, Kamui Woods just stands there woodenly and stares straight ahead, as helpful as that was I must say that it was quite dangerous. Many thanks however. Ha! Izuku freezes as his mind processes everything that was happening to him. He wasn't in trouble but, quirk. Him. No. He just used finite logic in his brain to get himself out of trouble. A quirk can only get you so far. And when you're quirkless you have to act smart or you're going to be killed. He doesn't know what to say to the pro's praises though. What would he say? What would someone with a quirk their entire life and was comfortable with it say? Izuku stammers. Well that's great. Now they think I have a quirk. IQ or something. He thinks. Thanks, yeah, I mean, you're welcome. The heroes smile and clap his back. With that quirk my man, you can become a great hero. Death Arm says before he leaves back to their headquarters. Izuku keeps his bright smile pasted on until they leave and then he slowly starts to walk home, towards the orphanage. As he gets farther and farther from the crime site, resentment fills his heart and his smile slowly drops. He was outright disgusted. If those heroes had found out that he was quirkless, Izuku could 100% guarantee that he wouldn't have been spoken to like that. Now he knew. Now he understood what the heroes were really like. He now understands what having a quirk lets you experience in life. As Izuku turns the corner of the suburban area in Tokyo aiming for his home when a voice calls out to him from behind. A familiar voice. All Might's POV, young man. I call out as I round the corner. The green hair boy had sped up earlier and in my current form I had trouble keeping up. The boy pauses and looks back at me before ducking his head in respect. Izuku's POV anger. That's the only emotion he was feeling. He needed to get home or else dash. But no these events, these idiot heroes and idiot villains. They were blocking his way home, making him late. This far from his school, from his tormentor, his instinctive acting, his defense and coping skill, was lowered and he was unguarded. Yes. Midoriya Izuku was back to his usual snarky, sassy self. The innocence was a self-defense system for him, against his tormentors and the world. Rule hashtag never show them what you're capable of. Rule hashtag suppress. Repress. Regress. Yes, All Might. Izuku says as he lowered his head in respect and to hide the dark flash of his eyes. I'm so happy to see you again. He releases a sweet laugh before All Might says anything more. Izuku cuts in and lays his fanboy on a bit thick. Imagine meeting my hero and idol of so many years twice in a day. A dream come true. You can go F yourself. Was what he was actually thinking. All Might opens his mouth and before he even starts talking, Izuku feels annoyed. He ducks his head again to hide the anger and disdain written on his face. You did well, young man. You showed me what I'm fighting for. You inspired me to work hard. I'll fight for you guys. I'll fight for the next generation of heroes. All Might beams, that fight was well strategized. I'm impressed by your quirk. So intelligent. Izuku rolled his eyes mentally and thought. Did you ever consider that people could actually do things quirkless? OMGs, no way. Quirkless people aren't as noob and useless as you thought. Thanks, Izuku stammers. You inspired me since you're so smart I came to tell you something. No, to advise you something. All Might seriously says, I want you to enroll into UA and become a hero. I believe that you can become a hero. A great one. Ha. Bruh. All Might isn't done and he continues, and I want you to stop hanging out with that quirkless friend of yours. He will only hold you back from your full potential. He'll drag you down if not backwards. Izuku sees red for a moment before he takes a deep breath and put years of acting innocent and sweet to practice. He stammers in a practiced way, I'll think about it. After all, he is my friend. I can't abandon him like that. In reality though, Izuku was thinking that his ex-idol was spilling a load of dipshit to his ears. Then Izuku smiles, maybe I'll get my friend to enroll in UA with me. We'll go together. I'm sure if he was the one to do it, he could become a hero even though he's quirkless. All Might frowns and Izuku smirks mentally. Perfect. No, there's no way that All Might starts, and Izuku's eyes narrow before widening again in an innocent, pure way. I'll tell him that he can prove people wrong. That a quirkless kid can become a hero. I'll tell him I believe in him. Izuku continues with his delusional, fakely happy, facade. He ignored whatever All Might was saying before him. Something about quirkless people not being able to be a hero. Whatever, nobody really asked for his opinion this time. All Might continues frowning and Izuku turns on his heel before walking away. I'll be working at UA this year. All Might finally says. So if you want to apply, then I'll be glad to be your teacher. In fact, I'll be honored to be able to raise such a bright mind up to such great hero lengths. How do you know I'll pass? Izuku asks. All Might smiles and booms, I just have the feeling that you're going to be an amazing hero. All Might lets out a boisterous laugh before shouting, I am going to leave like a normal person. Izuku stays there for a couple more moments, and as he hears All Might's footsteps recede in the distance, he whispers to himself, yeah, of course I'm going to be an amazing hero. I've already passed all those heroes. All those heroes who save people. What are they going to save? When they can't even save themselves. When they can't even encourage and inspire when people are at the lowest of their lows. No, I'm already a pretty amazing person. That much I can tell. But I'll show you. I'll be the best hero you've ever seen. And we'll see who's laughing when you learn I'm quirkless. Izuku's POV. Izuku has finally managed to reach the orphanage without any more trouble from a bunch of idiots and such. He take a good look at the goth-like exterior of the tall orphanage before he walks up the walkway to the small porch. The orphanage was easy to find. If you care ABT details and such, here it is. In the neighborhood of 1 to 2 story buildings, seeing a 3-story building definitely put the orphanage out of place. All the buildings next to the orphanage, going in any direction, had the modern vibe going, and then you look at the orphanage and with its dark wood and goth vibe, it looked out of place. Not to mention the occasionally boarded windows, you could say that the orphanage stood out. With a creak the door opens into a warm foyer. A complete contrast to the outside exterior, the orphanage on the inside was warm and had a homely feeling. Izuku stands on the door mat for a couple of moments before he takes off his shoes and step up into his house. Hearing the door open, Mrs. appears at the top of the 2nd-story staircase. She has a wooden cane in hand and a disgruntled look on her face. The cane taps in front of her as she walks down the steps unsteadily. She reaches the foyer and hobbles towards Izuku. She's a short, wrinkled figure with white hair and glassy eyes that couldn't see a thing. With a well-aimed move of her cane, Mrs. manages to smack Izuku on the side of his head. Get ready for dinner, she rasps and looks, or tries to, sternly at the green-haired boy before her. But she breaks into a worried, but kind grin. I can't believe you worried me like that. Coming home that late. Was it those boys again? If so, bring them here. I'll tell them off. I'll tell them to stop bothering you. Izuku I know. Izuku mutters, I'll stand up for myself. And I'm sorry for worrying you, it's just today was a long day that's no excuse, young man. Mrs. snaps, I was worried that something happened to you like last time. I thought you'd been re-kidnapped by your previous foster parents. Do you know how worried I was? I'm sorry. Izuku says meekly, staring down at his feet. His foster parents, huh? Those assholes. Flashback. Izuku's hand was being held by a tall young lady. No, not being held. It was being grasped. And he was being dragged to this couple's car. They had come for him this time at the orphanage. He was surprised. He had been at the orphanage for 6 months only. He was still 4 and it had been 6 months since his mother had died and he was left all alone in the cruel harsh world. In those 6 months nobody yet had wanted a quirkless and he knew his chances of getting adopted were very slim. Quirkless weren't useful in the world. But just this morning, Mrs. had knocked on his door and had told him that a couple was here to adopt him. He had been surprised, and he was still wary. The tall woman whose name was Aubrey, she has auburn hair and black eyes, continued dragging him back to their old, black car. He had been stuck in that orphanage for so long, being homeschooled by a not yet blind Mrs., that he couldn't even tell what brand it was. The man, whose name was Tom, he was a plain-looking man with short brown hair and brown eyes, was wearing a suit and he opened the backseat door open for Aubrey to throw Izuku into the back seat. "Buckle up," she said with a dark smile. Tom next opened the door for her. While she got into the car, Izuku overheard him whisper to her, "Do you think this one will work for dash, should dash?" The woman hisses as she slams the door closed shut herself. Tom rolled his shoulders. From Izuku's young eyes they were either a very bad couple, or they weren't a couple at all. Well, that wasn't his problem. Tom got into his car himself and with a warm smile at Izuku, he said, "Are you ready for your fate?" He got smacked by Aubrey and shut up with a frown. The car pulled out of the driveway in front of the orphanage and Izuku turned around in his seat to see his home one more time. Mrs. was standing there with a concerned face. He watches as she pulls a phone out of her pocket and with her black hair twisted around one finger and green eyes narrowed in concentration, she started talking on the phone. "Yes. Mrs. is younger. You'll see why she aged so much later." Izuku sat back down in the car and Aubrey shot a look back at him. "Kid. Put your seatbelt on. You can't die yet." The adults had a real laugh out of that one. Izuku watches the traffic and other flash by. This was his first time of the house this month and since he rarely got to go out, he watches in amazement as everyone seemed to have an operating life. The car continued driving through the city until they turned down a road. Izuku knew this road. This was a no-no road. Mrs. told him that this road wasn't safe. Why were they here? The car starts towards a warehouse and Izuku wonders if he's living there. It would be fun. He thinks, he's not sure, just trying to convince himself. With a screech Tom parks and Aubrey gets out of the car in a flash. Izuku's door click opens and Aubrey reaches in, her manicured nails twisted like claws as they clasp onto the young boy's right arm for a moment before she drags him out of the car. "Come on," she says motioning to Tom, "let's deliver this boy to the boss and then leave." Izuku stares in wonder, completely silent as the couple leads him into one of the warehouse's smaller entrance. At first glance it looks like your typical warehouse with boxes everywhere, stacked high one upon each other. But if Izuku thinks about it, it seems more like a maze. Something to keep him trapped here inside. But that's just his imagination playing him right. His mind was gaslighting him. The couple leading him take a couple more confusing turns, each of them flanking Izuku. It's a couple of minutes before he sees an end. With a suppressed giggle he awaits to see what awaits him as the end of the maze of boxes comes. Izuku could see what was there in the small, clear space. A chair. A chair. Izuku's POV, 4 years old, continuing the flashback from the previous chapter, he didn't know why there was a chair. And what a suspicious-looking chair it was. There was a bunch of wires hooked up to the chair. Or in general just floating around. Izuku knew he shouldn't be feeling this way, since such nice people had finally adopted him, but still Izuku didn't feel safe here. Was he just being foolish? Aubrey looks at him and then squats down at him to look him in the eyes. "You're a smart kid, right?" she asks and Izuku nods. She stands back up and looks at Tom. They both smile at the same time in agreement before Tom, this time, squats in front of Izuku. Izuku Tom starts and then pauses. "How about this? We want you to sit in the chair. We want to give you a test, to see how smart you are. We want to see how much we need to teach you, or how many grades you need to pass before you can start your new school. Izuku, not knowing better, just nods. He didn't need an explanation. He just hopes this couple will love him like Mrs. does. With a happy smile, Tom stands up and walks with Izuku the last remaining steps to the chair. Up close the chair looked especially frightening. Swallowing down his fear, Izuku steps on a little step to boost himself up into the leather chair. Think the one you see in dentist's office, but it's not lowered back. "Ah, you've arrived," a new voice says, and a portly middle-aged man appears from the shadows. He has a pair of thick, circular spectacles covering his face and sported a mustache. But that was the only hair that could be found on his head. "Tom, Aubrey, you may go." With a nod, the two leave the clearing and head back into the maze. From where Izuku is sitting he can see them give a childish high five to each other. Izuku continues sitting on the chair and watches the portly man walk around him. The man mutters. "I see." He starts attaching the wires to Izuku, and Izuku's round eyes widen even further. He starts to struggle, but the man brings a metal clasp over his stomach and attaches it to the other side of the chair. Izuku hadn't seen that when he'd approached the chair. His feet are locked up next, and then his neck. His arms were lying next to his sides and are already under the tight metal clasp that covered his torso. The portly man that must have been a doctor starts humming as he continues to hook Izuku up to wires. Before long he's inserted and 4 into Izuku's arm. "All right." The man announces to seemingly no one, but a voice responds from someone in the room. No, it was a computer on one of the corners of the table that rested near the wall, near Izuku's chair. "Very well." The other man, not the doctor, says, "You may begin. Report back by tomorrow with your results. If he doesn't die." Izuku freezes. "Die." The doctor man cackles and puts a mask over his face. He slides into a scrub, and with a deafening snap, the doctor grabs a new needle with an unknown fluid inside and prepares it to plunge it into Izuku's arm. There's a sting and a clenching pain where the needle entered, and then nothing. Slowly he feels the seat beneath him heating up, until it's overbearingly hot. "Sorry," the doctor apologizes, "I just need you to flow faster. I need you to either die faster or don't." Izuku starts sweating, and then that's when the real pain starts. On top of the heated chair to the point where it's almost burning, the doctor started pushing a button on his remote. There's small pulses of electric shocks buzzing through Izuku's body. Izuku could feel his flowing faster and faster. And as the liquid injected into his stream started to move through his body, that's when he feels it. Something's ripping his body apart. Something is ripping his mind apart. It's tearing him up from the inside. Cell by cell. Splitting him apart only to place something in its stead. What was it leaving behind? But then he feels that being destroyed too. He dash. What were they doing to him? The pain ceases for a moment and Izuku lays there panting. He won't scream. He won't say a thing. Was this what the real world like? The doctor watches on with a curious expression and starts taking notes on his clipboard. The pain starts again. The heat. The electricity. He can feel the pain. Everywhere. Everywhere and nowhere at once. Izuku's body was being overflooded with information. His neurons couldn't keep up. His pain receptors were being fried. But they were back. The pain, the heat, the splitting, the buzz, it was all back, and Izuku had to sit there and endure it all. The doctor frowns. Things were looking interesting. He grabs another needle with the same fluid on the inside and rushes over to Izuku's side. Time was of the essence. With a jab and a push down on the plunger, Izuku feels the liquid entering his body again. There's a calm, where he feels nothing. Before it comes raging back. Stronger than before. So much stronger than before. Now it felt like his cells were ripping themselves in half and then ripping a half of that. And then this liquid was stitching them back up before ripping them again. This continues for the rest of the day. The whole night. Over and over and over and over and over. The doctor is pleased. Izuku is loosing it. His hair is slowly turning white. Already a quarter of his locks were white. This continues the next day. And the next. All day, all night. More white hair. More pain. The next. The next. The next. The next. A new needle. Another. 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 More of that liquid. It's been a week. The doctor has made a breakthrough. This would be the last couple days needed. There's a tap on the doctor's shoulder and he whirls around irritated. Who was bothering him at a time like this? It's her. There's a tap on the doctor's shoulder and he whirls around irritated. Who was bothering him at a time like this? It's her. Izuku's POV, 4 years old, still flashback. Izuku was passed out from all the pain. They were taking a break from his own personal torture when the doctor was tapped on the shoulder. Her POV, a week prior. Some couple had come to her orphanage asking to adopt a kid. She had told them of all the kids she had. They wanted the quirkless one, they had said. She was suspicious. Why? She asked. They wanted to show him what true love was. What the world was really like. To let him experience a normal childhood. She was suspicious. But she agreed. Sign here. She said. And they had. They had paid and she had went up to get Izuku. Knocking on his door before entering, she walks to the boy's side and shook him awake. Mrs. POV, a week earlier. Mrs. had let her know Izuku wasn't her son. Even though she did think of him like one. But she had let him go with that villainous couple. Orders from above. Some hero had infiltrated a large villain group and had told the commission's office that they were going to Mrs. Orphanage for an quirkless kid. All she had to do was give up her boy to them and place a tracker on Izuku before they left. That was easy enough. She just didn't understand how hard it would be to watch her boy part from her. To hand him over to the villains. She watches as they drag Izuku to her car and yeet him into the back seat. Mrs. sees him turn around and wave at her before they drive off. She didn't know what would happen to him. All the commission's office had told her was that the villain group was coming for Izuku. She didn't think they knew what the villains were going to do either. Izuku's green head slowly disappears from view and she pulls out her secure, work phone. Dialing the commission's office, she waits for the other side to pick up. Hello. The head of the commission office says. Hello. They have the boy and I have the tracker. Mrs. says. There's a buzz and a click before the voice comes back on. We understand. Thank you. Stand on standby and report locations every hour. Mrs. nods in understanding. She heads back inside the orphanage and starts waking the other kids up. Today was going to be a long day. 30 minutes later she checks the tracker. Its green screen was showing a map and a red blinking dot at a location. Where was that? It was too fast, she couldn't tell what the exact location was. The dot stops blinking and then disappears. What had happened? In a frantic rush she ushers the children outside into the backyard and warns them not to wander too far. Hello. The head of the commission says again after Mrs. called them. The tracker's dead. She tells them. There's an intake of breath from the other side before the voice crackles through. Last known location. Somewhere slightly north of Tokyo. Towards the slums. Mrs. tells them. Okay. We understand. We will use that information and the hero's information on the villain's bases to triangulate his position. How fast can you find him? Mrs. asks frantically. She didn't know what they were doing to her boy. He could be getting tortured right now for all she knew. It may take a while. We still have to patrol and set up watches near that area. Please stand on standby until called. The voice says, not giving away any more information. There's a click from the other end and the call ends. With a grunt of frustration, Mrs. slams her fist into the wall. Her poor boy. Time skip. It had taken 6 more days of scouting the location and planning before they could go retrieve Izuku. The commission had triangulated the warehouse's position on the first day and had sent out scouts and patrols near the building. Indeed, they saw the couple entering and exiting often. The commission was able to secure a search warrant and backup from the police too in the next 5 days. At last they had a plan and were able to move. Everyone had gathered in front of the warehouse right now. Pros of all different backgrounds were there. Who knew what sort of villain lay inside? Eraserhead, Endeavor, Hawks, Mirko, those were some of the bigger heroes. She was hero too. An undercover hero, but this was her boy. She had to help. Mrs. Quirk, she could make her enemies, anything, AI, animals, humans, etc. blank out. They wouldn't be able to think, no thought process for 3 seconds. But then she has to blink and then they regain their immune to her quirk for the next 3 minutes. It works on anyone within a 3-meter radius as long as she can see all of them. Drawbacks, the 3-minute cooldown and the fact that she had to be pretty close to them. With police covering their backs, Hawks went ahead and slowly cut down the door's hinges. With his thinnest feather that slips through the crack on top of the door, he's able to push the door forward and into the arms of the awaiting hero, Endeavor. Did that make sense? The pros all rushed inside and stared in shock all around. Mrs.'s earlier thoughts were right. It was indeed a maze. Hawks desperately wanted to fly around the warehouse, but he didn't want to get spotted. Who knows how close Izuku and the villain were to the heroes? Instead, Eraserhead jumped around on top of all the stacked boxes, signaling that it was clear. The rest of the heroes followed him. They managed to make it through the maze with only a couple of backtracks. As they got closer, they jumped up on top of the stacked boxes too. Everyone hid in the shadows and looked at the clearing. Nothing would prepare them for the sight they would see. No years of experience would prepare them for the sight before their eyes. ISTG, I'm so scared where this story is going. It's going off plan and now my anxiety is slowly skewering my gut. I hope this isn't too bad for you guys. Not Izuku's POV, he's passed out, it's third-person POV. All the heroes were perched on top of the boxes at this point. All eyes were on the clearing where Izuku sat on the chair. All eyes were on the doctor and Izuku. He wasn't out yet. Izuku was still very much awake. The sight before them sickened all the heroes. Izuku was on the chair. His hair was dark, blocked by all the shadows overcasting his face. They saw the doctor humming to himself as he prepared the next needle. Nobody could move as they watched the doctor jam the needle into Izuku's arm. The remote buttons are fiddled with next and the heat and electricity pulses are turned on. The doctor takes notes as the liquid takes effect. Izuku's pain receptors and neurons are long dead and can no longer process the pain from heat and the electricity, but every time, he can feel the liquid slowly tear him apart on the inside. Each time the pain is greater and less at the same time. Something was messing with his brain. There was something there lurking in the shadows of Izuku's brain. He lets out a scream. "St, stop." His voice and throat can barely form the words. "Ple, please." He always asks. No matter how much it hurt. Izuku had given up hope days ago. He knew instinctively after this that he would never trust anyone ever again. Not after that couple brought him here. But still, was there hope that this man would? He coughs as the pain lessens and splatters his shirt and the floor. The heroes watch stricken as the doctor, instead of stopping, increases the heat and the voltage and the liquid goes into effect again. Izuku's own body was trying to kill him. There's no amount of screaming that will help Izuku with his pain. He doesn't try anymore. I thought. Izuku coughs again as a rare moment of peace comes and the liquid stops trying to tear his body apart and piece it back together. The heroes lean forward in their shadows, they need to hear this boy's words. Even if something, maybe fate, was keeping them from moving, they were still enraptured by his words. Whatever was happening to this boy, they didn't want to think about it. Izuku starts again. I thought the heroes, were supposed to save people. I thought they would have come to save me by now. Izuku coughs and slowly loses his hold on reality and conscious as the doctor lets out a maniacal chuckle. His recovery time is getting less and less. The tests are working on him. The quirk is getting used to him. No. He's getting used to the quirk. Before long I'll have mastered this. The doctor says with a self-satisfied grin, a couple more days and then he'll be perfect. The perfect masterpiece. The heroes, still shocked by the poor boy's words, could only understood a couple words from the seemingly random sentences that streamed out from the doctor's mouth. Only Mrs. could focus. If you would even call it that. Green eyes flashing with anger, she drops down stealthily to the floor and walks towards the doctor. Nobody stops her. They understand. They can't. With light steps she sneaks up to the doctor and taps his shoulder. Who are you? The bald man asks as he slowly turns around. Stop bothering me now. Mrs. throws a punch at the bald man's face and surprisingly for his size, he's able to dodge quickly. Heroes. The man wails. Why must you come now when I'm so close to a breakthrough? That boy is under my watch, you son of a beach. Mrs. spits and her eyes narrow. She activates her quirk and watches as the man's eyes go blank, not able to think. The heroes nod at her and quickly get ready to attack, but before the 3 seconds are over, before even the fastest hero, Hawks, can land a hit in, the portly man swipes at Mrs. Eyes. With a knife. She's not prepared. She never expected this. It wasn't her fault. The splatters as Mrs. sees red and then dark cover her vision. She can't see. Someone screams. And then silence. There's silence from both sides as her quirk wears off. The silence is broken by the doctor's mad cackling. I see. Your quirk really had something to do with your eyes, didn't it? The portly man boisters a chuckle. What an interesting quirk. Mrs. lets out a screech of agony before she stumbles back and passes out, her puddling beneath her hair. Her is the same color as her hair. The rest of the heroes quickly recover and rush in to throw punches, kicks, and whatever fighting method they had. They needed to use her sacrifice to their advantage. To save the kid that she had loved so much. Why did they think that she was dead anyways? The knife was a small butter knife. It wouldn't have stabbed her brain and killed her. No. She was bleeding out. As the heroes attack, they're caught off guard as they see the doctor dodge every single attack. No matter how fast, no matter how strong. When Eraserhead finally manages to get his sights on the doctor and his quirk activates, lifting his hair and eyes glowing red, they all watch in shock as they see the man slowly squish down into a muddy puddle. Remember that this doctor was able to recreate quirks into Nomus, and even though this is 5 years early, he has a prototype with twice his quirk because plot reasons. This doctor was a fake. There's a clamor and uproar as all the heroes realize what had happened. Hawks rushes over to Mrs. side and tries his best to help her even though his medical knowledge was lacking. What shocks him is as Mrs. bleeds out from her eyes, her hair color bleeds out too, and her eyes, which would have scarred but they don't even get the chance to scar, they turn cloudy and heal slightly immediately. Mrs. had a secret. Her hair would turn white if her body were to ever suffer severe trauma, and it would heal her a little bit. Just so that she won't die. Hence why in the current day POV her hair is white and eyes cloudy. It was a backup plan. She's not completely blind. But Izuku doesn't know that. Hawks and Endeavor, who was just standing there watching, not sure how to help the other useless shitty heroes out, as he puts it, both gasp in surprise as they see Mrs. rise and then immediately rush over to Izuku. The remaining heroes had split into two groups. One group would retrieve Izuku and one to explore and confiscate the whole warehouse. The first group approaches Izuku cautiously and then stand in shock with their mouths open, Aizawa included, as Mrs. pushes through them, her eyesight fuzzy. She launches herself at Izuku and shakily tries to get him free. She can't see too well though. A number of the heroes gently pry her away and tell her to calm down. Tell her that they would get him out, to trust them. She resists, obviously. Aizawa ignored the useless idiots who were calming down Mrs. and secured Izuku himself. He managed to unlock and unhook the poor boy from the chair. As he laid the kid on the floor, and from the brief moment he was in contact with the kid, Aizawa could sort of sense the bare minimum of damage and pain the kid really was in. Although passed out, his body continued twitching from the aftershocks of the electric shocks. His body was burned in multiple places. He had lost a lot of weight even with the 4 in his arm that Aizawa had removed earlier. There were covering his arms everywhere from all the needles. And Aizawa couldn't see but rather feel that on Izuku's neck, legs, parts of his arm, and if he was guessing right, torso, were the imprints of the metal band that kept him secured to the chair. No. That was the bare minimum. Izuku was in a lot of pain. After the all-clear sign, the paramedics scurried in and managed to get the kid and Mrs. out back towards their ambulance. Aizawa follows them outside, and under the sunlight, is when he truly sees the most obvious sign of trauma on the young boy. Izuku's hair color is dash. Izuku's POV, still like 10 years ago when he was. It's the aftermath of the incident, though he's 14 now. Izuku was drowning in the dark. He couldn't see anything, feel anything, hear anything, move anything. All he could tell was that he was in his head. As per the norm and usual. But this time he couldn't feel his body. He couldn't move his body. There was only him, a phantom figure in his own mind. It was rather dark in here. Pretty empty too. Was he in the wrong room or something? Separate from all the memories and emotions. Something to keep him entertained at least. But, it was kind of comforting to be here in the silence and the dark. Especially after all the pain. All the heat. All the light. All the searing pain in his body. But he didn't know where that pain came from. He couldn't remember. Then there's the problem of something. A light something. No, someone was trying to wake him up. If he was being honest to himself, he didn't want to wake up. It was better down here. In the dark. He felt understood. He felt home. He felt safe. But the light was insistent, and so Izuku was slowly drawn out of the dark crevice he was in back to the world. He guessed it was better than staying down here and not being able to remember anything. Except the phantom pain. But from what? Mrs. POV Izuku was laying on the bed and she was holding his hand. She could faintly see that he had just blinked. Or was that just a hallucination? When was the last time she'd slept? No, it wasn't a hallucination. He had blinked and just now she felt his finger twitch. No matter how uncertain she was on her own eyesight, she could trust her touch. What? Was he dying? Or was he waking up? After an almost whole 2 months. Izuku's POV Izuku woke up in a hospital. In a bed. In a blue hospital gown. In a bright white room with a beeping machine to his side. There's a prickling sensation in his arms. Was that a needle? With a large gasp, without thinking, Izuku started pulling it out. It popped out with a small trickle of. He doesn't feel the pain, just checks all over his body. There's more. He keeps pulling them until they're all out. He doesn't know why. What caused him to act like this? Izuku. Mrs. Voice calls out. She wasn't waiting for a response, but when she walks into the room she blurrily sees Izuku sitting there in his hospital bed. Hey! Izuku tries. She screams. Did he do something wrong? Izuku wonders. And why were her eyes like that? No, it was just an overjoyed scream. Nurses rush into the room and start coming over to Izuku's side. When they see the pulled-out needles they freeze. How should they proceed? What do they do with a traumatized kid like this? How do they treat him? Mrs. gives them a look and they leave the room. Message received. She would talk to him first and see what he remembered. Figure out how to proceed. Mrs. Izuku asks, "What am I doing here? Aren't I supposed to be with my foster parents? Aubrey and Tom. The last thing I remember is taking the stairs down to go greet the." What happened? Mrs. freezes. What should she tell him? Choosing her words carefully, she finally decides on what to say. Izuku, she starts and takes a deep breath before walking over unsteadily, she can't see too well, to his side and sitting on the chair that's placed there. She grabs his hands and squeezes tight. He squeezes back. She almost breaks down crying. "Izuku, you went with your foster parents," she says and then pauses. Should she tell him he tripped? No, he would still at the least have memories of tripping down the stairs. "You went with your foster parents. And you spent a week with them." She looks into his clear green eyes. He smiles. "Were they nice to me?" No. His smile falls. "They weren't good people. They hurt you, Izuku. You were with them for a week. They hurt you really badly. We only found out about 1.5 months ago. The heroes saved you and brought you here. You were in a coma." But Izuku started. "Why can't I remember anything then?" "It's the trauma," a doctor says. Nobody had heard him enter the room. Izuku instinctively flinches away from the doctor. Something about the scrub uniform of the doctors was scaring him. He didn't know why. No, he couldn't remember why. And why were Mrs. eyes like that? Why didn't the adults just give him a chance to ask more questions? "I'm Dr. Tsukishima. The trauma made you forget. Or your brain to protect your body, it hid away whatever happened to you." But no, that wasn't true. Izuku could remember. He could remember some things. There were definitely knives involved. And needles. And a dentist's chair. What was Mrs. hiding from him? His eyes narrow in suspicion before they relax. He would trust them for now. After all, he knew how tricky the human mind was. Something about him, it felt older. But it felt right. As if some part of him knew that it could no longer remain young. His mind had matured. Not that he knew why. He looks around his hospital room once more. The sliding door that the doctor had come through was slightly ajar and Izuku could tell that he was on the first or second floor. There was a small tree outside his window. His room was bare except for the bed, table, 2 chairs, and a desk with the doctor's computer on it. The table had an apple. The doctor followed his gaze to the apple and smiled at him. "Do you want the apple?" Izuku stopped. Did he want the apple? He wasn't hungry, but "I'll cut it for you," the doctor says. Izuku nods and watches as the doctor picks up the plate and there's a small fruit knife that was hidden from his view. He watches as the doctor slowly peels and slices the apples for him. His head hurt. Really, really, hurt. It felt like it was splitting in half. Trying to sabotage me again. He thinks. Again. Where did he get that thought? With a small groan, he grabs his heads in his hands. Mrs. who was staying silent but who was holding on to Izuku's hands gasps in alarm as Izuku releases her hand and clutches at his head. The doctor turns around from where he's cutting the apple and looks back in concern. What was going on? A small scene was playing itself out in Izuku's mind. He just wanted to eat the apple and ask Mrs. questions. Why? Izuku's POV, a flashback in a flashback LOL, still 4 years old. A small scene was playing itself out in Izuku's mind. He was back, in a room. No, not a room. It was a building, a warehouse. To Izuku this place felt familiar, he just couldn't put his finger on why. More like he couldn't remember. Izuku tried to get up, off that chair he was sitting on and found that he couldn't move. When he looked down at himself he almost choked with surprise. He was tied down to the chair, multiple needles sticking out of his arms. Was this where his recent fear of dentist chairs and needles come from? No, it couldn't be. This was just his brain trying to trick him. There was no one near him. Where was everyone? Couldn't they come back? Keep him company at least. Tell him what was going on. Izuku can't do anything in the past though, he can only watch with dull blank eyes as a pair of figures slowly appear from the shadows. What was with all the boxes around him? Some sort of science experiment perhaps. If so, what was he doing here? Was this a memory? An imagination? The pair of figures slowly strode forward towards the Izuku, and once both of them step out into the light, Izuku can see their faces. There's a tall, willowy woman on the right of a plain, average-looking man. The woman had auburn hair and black eyes while the man still looked pretty average. Average build, no outstanding features. Why was he? Why wasn't he at Aubrey's and Tom's house? Or were these people his foster parents? Aubrey, that was believable, she did have red hair. If so, her parents were really unoriginal people. And Tom? A plain name for a plain man. He didn't know why he was thinking like this. These people could be completely different people. His voice wouldn't work and he had to try a couple more times before he could properly ask, who are you guys? We're Tom and Aubrey. Aubrey says with a sick smile. Your foster parents. Why am I here? He asks after some more stuttering. As you could tell, he was developing his habit of muttering and stuttering here. Well, Tom says average ly. Seriously, everything about this man was normal. We're not actually your foster parents. He says, we changed our name and faked our identities. Izuku mentally rolled his eyes, he had thought that much as soon as he'd woken up here. But this was just a dream, right? So did that mean, they were kidnappers? He was muttering. He was going insane. Were they villains? No, villains wouldn't come and talk to their prisoners, right? And did prisoners even keep prisoners? And if so, why a 4-year-old quirkless boy like him? He was useless after all. You're here to be experimented on. A man's voice comes from behind Izuku's chair where he can't see, and a hand pats his fluffy hair. The man walks around the chair and Izuku can see a doctor. Oh, his fear, the coat. Oh. The man had somehow understood his mumbling. Well, that much was obvious, the doctor did spend the whole day with Izuku. But Aubrey says with a maniacal smile, today we're not here for that. Yeah. Tom shouts. The doctor sighs, I'm sorry about this, my boy. I was hoping I could test on you unscathed, but these two idiots asked to try something and I have to find a way to pay them back. Plus, I do need a sample of you. Stop talking. Aubrey says as she moves forward and shoves the doctor away. I'll be going, he says as he leaves. I have a weak stomach for torturing people. I couldn't bear to watch. Hypocrite. Some other mental part screamed. You tortured me every day. Lies. Shut up. Aubrey smiles as she goes to the table on the side of his chair, the one with AFO's computer on it, and grabs a knife that's prepared there. How much were we allowed again? She asks Tom as she licks her knife. We're allowed about 4 liters of his. Wait. Izuku stared at both of them in shock as Tom stands back and watches as Aubrey gets closer to Izuku. There's a small slice as she slowly carves a piece of his arm off. For a moment his body stiffens as if prepared for the pain, but then it relaxes. There's no pain. Just the sight of a piece of his arm in the lady's arm was slightly disgruntling. Slightly. The doctor needs this, she says with an unhappy smile. Oh, you're so cute, Izuku. She throws the whole mess to Tom and he catches it. With an offhanded sigh, Tom slides that thing into a small container and seals it. Togawa, sorry, Aubrey, once you're done with the, can I borrow him for a moment? I want to get some measurements in. What was going on? Was he at Red Cross or something? Izuku was really confused. Did the guy had to get his measurements for clothes? What was going on? It's fine, do it before I go, maybe it'll be better. Aubrey exclaims as she tucks the knife onto her waistband. Aubrey and Tom switched places, with Aubrey cradling the container with part of his arm in it, before she places it down on the floor and refocuses on Izuku. Tom had approached Izuku and out of nowhere he pulled out a measuring tape. What the dash? Izuku thought. Seriously, could someone tell him what was going on? He was so confused. Why was his brain tricking him like this? Did it really like this kind of sick joke? After Tom puts his measuring tape away and backed off, Aubrey came back. What? Izuku's unflashback mind screamed. You're back for more. Aubrey had instead grabbed a needle from her waist and plunged it into his arm. He had instinctively tensed, some reflex rising from somewhere deep within him. If he could have moved, he would have slapped her. Aubrey was slowly drawing his into a small container she kept to her belt and back. It was clever if he thought about it. Whatever her quirk was probably had to do with, and so that needle with a tube and container attached to it, he was mumbling again. Aubrey had finished drawing. For leaders of his and the doctor had come back from watching in the corner. Why does he have a chunk of skin missing? The doctor asked and the two adults gulped. Tom started. I'll fix it, Aubrey said. There had been multiple tools from where she had grabbed the knife from earlier on. Make sure to tuck it back onto her waist. She headed over there and grabbed a metal rod that would heat up to unbearable heat. With a small squelch she pressed it onto Izuku's arm. Again poor sweet Izuku tensed, waiting for the pain. But again there was nothing. Just the smell as the flesh burned and closed. Alright, now that you've fixed the problem and got what you wanted. Doctor said to the two adults, be on your way and leave me be to my experimenting. Your torturing hurts my eyes. Aubrey and Tom leave without a word and the doctor watches them curiously before bending over to pick up the container with a piece of Izuku in it. He says before tucking it into his pocket. End of that flashback. Izuku was still sitting on his hospital bed. He was safe. Not in that dark warehouse with psychotic people and hypocrites. But why would his brain want to show him some messed up things like that? Just for a laugh. Nobody was laughing right now. This was Izuku's body and he could tell you that he wasn't laughing at all. He said, and Mrs. leaned forward. What did those foster parents do to me? She chose her words carefully. Did they Izuku pauses before choking down on his fear and said pitifully, did they hurt me? With a Mrs. started shaking her head feverishly, no. 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 Of course not. When you were grabbing your head just now, was your mind showing you something from the past? She waits for Izuku to nod and when he does she continues, no. 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 That's not true. They just didn't feed you for a week and they locked you up in their basement. They were planning to sell you off to an underground fighting ring. Izuku's face paled and Mrs. didn't know what to do. How would he accept the lie? Oh he said, they weren't that bad then. The trauma was already setting into his bones. But, what happened to your eyes? He finally asks. Finally. He had been really curious about it, but never really got the chance to ask, until now. The doctor was still in the room watching them with a curious expression. When Izuku turns his head towards the man and sees his clothing, he shudders again. It's not that the doctor looks like the doctor from his flashback. It was just, that . The doctor gave him a calculating look before leaving the room as silently as he had entered. End of 4 years old Izuku POV, back to 15 years old POV. That was the end of his flashback. It had ended, all over. If this was a video game, his brain being a screen, it would show the end sign. It was just a quick thought in his current time flow, but in his head where everything had been relieved, the time was there. Full, complete, everything. But regarding the fact of what Mrs. had said about his foster parents, if they were ever to have re-kidnapped him, he did have a response to that. Indeed. It would be dangerous, he guessed, if he were to be caught or kidnapped like that ever again. And quite traumatizing. Of course no human would have that much bad luck to be kidnapped twice by the same people. And Izuku believed that not even his bad luck was that bad. He didn't even know if he believed the flashback. It could all be a lie that his brain was making up. But back then he had asked Mrs. what had happened to her eyes. They were murky and cloudy back then, and Mrs. could still see slightly. Now they were white and Mrs. was completely blind. Her response was that she had tripped down the stairs of the orphanage and had hit her eyes on something sharp and dangerous. Lies. There was nothing she could have hit her eyes on. She was such a germophobic and was OCD about keeping the orphanage clean and tidy, there wouldn't be anything out for her to trip on or hit her eyes on. Lies. That's what it all was. She was lying to him. About everything. Everything was lying about him. It was simple. That much he could tell. Back then, even if he was 10, he still could tell that she was lying about something. It had been a month since he had been released from the hospital, and he had noticed the increased patrols around the orphanage and its neighborhood. They were worried about something, the something was probably him. Something bad had happened to him. Something really bad, something so bad that it almost led him to believe that what he'd seen and felt in the flashback at the hospital was real. But he didn't believe it until recently. In fact, he'd forgotten about it until now. He just thought his mind was trying to traumatize itself. But now that Bakugo had told him to take a swan dive off a roof, and now with Mrs. talking about those foster parents, he had started this flashback. He knew what had happened to him when he went with his foster parents, but what had happened after that one quick nap he had taken on that chair? What did Mrs. do? More importantly, what did Mrs. not do? He still didn't believe his brain 100%. Who knew, maybe it was tricking him too. Izuku wouldn't put it past his own brain to trick him like that. Maybe he should be thankful that Bakugo had said such a thing. The memories only came back because of that. After all, talking about his foster parents in the past hadn't been a trigger. It was as if his mind was saying, "Ha! You little SHT. You're telling me to kill myself. Beach what? Grinning face with big eyes when there are already so many people trying. Even since I was little. Ha! You won't see this bad beach kill myself. He's in fact going to not die, just to PSS everyone that thinks that quirkless people are a waste of space off. Ha! Like Izuku had said. He wouldn't put it past his brain to trick him with fake traumatic memories like that. Like most things these days, he took everything at face value. Still, if he took everything at face value, he'd expect people to take everything he said at face value too. Which is why even if there was something this traumatic that happened in his past, he would keep smiling and being an innocent being for everyone. He still had his own problems to take care of. He didn't need others to take care of them. Izuku was cold-hearted and stone-cold on the inside. Even after his flashback, all he could think was, DMN, that kid went through some rough SHT, why was he like that? He was getting off track, this topic would be revisited later, he decided. Mrs. was still roughly staring at where she thought his face would be, since she can't see anymore, before she deems that it's been long enough that they were standing there. Go to your room and clean yourself up. Izuku nods and starts to walk past her when she sticks her chin back out, almost tripping him. Don't scare me like that ever again, you hear me? If you're going to come home, at least call me first. Is that okay? He wouldn't get a chance to if he kept standing here like this. He didn't even get a chance to respond before she continues talking. And we're going to eat dinner soon. With that, she pulls back her cane and lets him walk past her and up the stairs. I was trying to figure out how the house looked on the outside and inside my foot has fallen asleep. It's been taking me like 5 minutes to get the flowing again grinning face with sweat alrm back, my foot has refuted itself, the orphanage was, like the outside, large on the inside. Once you entered through the front door and took off your shoes, you stepped up into a large foyer. From there, there's a large hallway. This led to a bathroom, Mrs. bedroom, an office, and a living entertainment room. Additionally to the right of the foyer was the kitchen and on the other side was a dining room. Mrs. had just left for the kitchen to cook which left the stairs up to the second floor open. Izuku walked up the stairs and tried his best to watch his steps, he couldn't afford to be too loud and attract her attention. No Mrs. he didn't want to deal with her again, he'll avoid her, hey Izuzu's Suksukuk, you're finally home. I'm so happy that you came back I needed you, a girl's voice croons just as he's about to step up onto the second floor from the stairs. Not her. No. Even if all his flashbacks were lies, she wasn't a lie. Please, not her. He just wanted to go home and get a rest, life had other plans for Izuku. 1067 words, guys. This chapter was so slow, I had so much trouble getting it up in over 1067 words. If some stuff seem really random then tots why. And also like he really did keep his act up. No matter what it's not until later that he'll truly be traumatized, RN is only his little bit of traumatized. Heh. Guys he's a cute cinnamon bun but ho. IDK I am going crazy RNBC of reasons. Comments. Please. Is this my second update in a day? Is it? Either any more ahaha Izuku's POV, hey Izuzu's Suksukuk, you're finally home. I'm so happy that you came back I needed you, a girl's voice croons as Izuku steps onto the second floor. The girl's arm sneaks around the corner of the staircase and from where he can't see her, grabs his forearm. He's wearing long sleeves but he knows that it won't stop her. Her fingers tighten on his forearms and the scars from before split open. Even through the shirt, when the girl removes her hand, it's stained with oh, the girl squeals as she shows herself. Izu you're is so pretty. You're is so good familiar good. She says as she liked her soaked fingers. The girl is not tall, average height with two messy, blonde buns on both sides of her head. She has yellow eyes that glowed when she got excited. Which was often. I always liked you're the best, she coos as she extends her hands. Say, would you mind if I no? Izuku said. For the last time no. Whenever he came home she was always vying for his always asking for more and more. He always told her no, but still every day she would cut his arms with her nails and lick whatever that got onto her fingers. He didn't know what to do. If he covered his arms in aluminum foil, she'd go after his ankles. It was really annoying. Since his forearm was already scarred and since he'd rather his ankles not be scarred, he let her use his arm. He didn't want to ask Mrs. for help. In fact Izuku had learned fast to wear long sleeves so that she would get less. It would be mostly soaked into his sleeves instead. He was spiteful like that. He couldn't remember when Himiko had come to the orphanage. Nor did he ever learn her last name. All he knew was that she was his tormentor. When Izuku had asked why he was target out of the rest of the orphanage kids, she didn't specify. He thought that it was because she couldn't remember, but he wasn't certain. But Izuku did remember that shortly after he got released from the hospital, she had appeared in the orphanage. That much he'd remembered. Himiko wasn't all that bad. In fact, if she didn't like his that much and annoy him like that every day, he would be friends with her. She didn't discriminate him just because he was quirkless. No, she only picked on him because she liked his. He didn't know if she was better though. Because of her he had scars all along his arms and he had to hide them, at least that covered and masked some of his own scars. I mean what? You heard nothing. UWU with a groan. Himiko releases his arm and smiles at Izuku. Why? You're so uptight, I just want some of your, that's not normal, Izuku says tiredly. he has no time to keep up his innocent small bean act anymore. He was just tired. With a pout, Himiko slowly grabs his arm again gently and pulls him up the last stair step. Fine. She declares before smiling at Izuku and saying something normal, make sure you get ready for dinner quick, I don't want to set up the table all by myself. Izuku acknowledges this with a nod and moves up the next flight of stairs. See. If Himiko wasn't a psycho who liked his too much, he would have considered her his sister long ago. After all, neither of them ever got adopted after that event, so he had lived with Himiko the longest out of any of the other orphan kids. Izuku continues walking up the steps of the third-story stairs. The second level was for the girls. There were 4 rooms each, able to fit about 5 kids in each. However, there were only a couple of girls. Actually, Izuku couldn't remember anymore. He couldn't bring himself to care about the other kids in the house. There are no other kids in the house, lol, they all got fostered out, which is why Izuku, Himiko, and Mrs. eat dinner together. Nobody else is there, smiley face, just wanted to point that out. The 3rd floor was for boys and the 4th was the attic meant for storing things. Like the 2nd floor, there were 4 rooms each, also holding up to 5 kids. However, Izuku being here for so long, he got his own room. It was the one deepest into the hallway and faced the backyard. He opens his door and enters his room and almost throws up. There's so much All Might merch in here. After his long day, he'd almost forgotten that All Might had talked to him. But now that he saw his previous idol again in his room, he remembered his conversation with the man from earlier. It made Izuku tired to think about it, and he ends up just dumping his iconic yellow backpack on the floor before settling onto his bed. Sigh. With that sigh, he moves to get himself ready, changing his shirt and pants. He knew that he had about 30 minutes where Mrs. was cooking all to himself. Izuku looks around his room and decides to clean it up. There are trash bags in his closet and he grabs one before stuffing all his All Might into there. He's careful to roll up all his posters. There are cups, blankets, posters, stuffies, notebooks, pens, shirts, some of them rare and some of them not. The bag is stuffed by the time he's done stripping his room down to its ordinariness. What to do with the things? How could he get by Mrs. without her noticing all his stuff and then her questioning him about it? His window was an option, but he didn't want his cups to break. After all, he wanted to sell those All Might merch. Izuku freezes his contemplation as there's a sudden smell of burning from somewhere. He rushes to his bedroom window, that faces the backyard, that's what I meant earlier, and looks down. There's blue flame covering and eating away at the 1st floor. Someone's quirk, no flame grew that fast and looked like that. Who was doing this dash? Mrs. She was down there on the 1st floor in the kitchen, cooking their dinner. Katsudon probably. Was she alright? Izuku's vision starts shaking and his breath comes in short gasps, his stomach starts to cramp and he folds in on himself. Now was not the time to be getting a panic attack, he tells himself. Like usual, that doesn't work. Precious moments of panic slips by before he's able to calm himself down. It's just a fire, Izuku tries to tell himself. That you're very afraid of the backyard is slowly catching on fire. If he were to escape, now would be the time. Izuku's POV, there were only moments until the backyard would be completely on fire. By now, the blue fire had turned to a normal one and the fire department had pulled up. Izuku thought quickly. He would need this, and this, and this. With that, Izuku slid his window open and tossed out the trash bag filled with All Might merch out of the window. It was yeeted spectacularly out of the window and sailed until it landed a short distance from where the fire was steadily eating up the grass. Izuku slowly climbed out of the window with his backpack on his back. He positions himself to be able to jump the furthest and farthest. Now that he was actually going to make his escape, it looked like a pretty tall fall. None the matter, he had fallen from taller places and survived. Bakugu, Izuku thought, thank you for all you trained me for this. With a steadied breath, he aims for the bag filled with the merch and jumps. He would be a hero. And heroes took risks. Yes. Izuku was very smart. He had taken out all the fragile, potentially sharp merch and instead replaced them with blankets from his room. On top of that he had managed to haul his small futon, which is a Japanese type of bed. The one that's a mattress on the floor. And yeeted that out of his window. With moments to spare he just shoved all his extra clothes into another bag and yeeted that out. His aim had been spectacular today, unlike earlier in the day, he was now extremely lucky. They all managed to land and clump together, stacking up and reinforcing one another. That was what he was aiming for. Izuku launched himself off his window ledge and onto the pile of mattresses. There's a sense of freedom and flight as he soars through the air. But that's quickly followed by a plummeting sensation and gravity decides to keep Izuku and he starts falling. Down. 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 His gamble paid off. With a dull thump, Izuku hits the cushioned ground and bounces off before hitting the actual ground with a less bone-shattering force. He was fine, just bruised a little bit. The ground around him starts to smoke up and the smoke already in the air makes everything hard to see anything. With a grunt, Izuku rolls up his futon and attaches that to his backpack, like a camping backpack. He leaves the bag of extra clothes and All Might merch behind. Fashion. Never heard of her, he thinks as he starts walking towards the backyard wall. It leads to the next house over, but that was burning too. It wasn't like he wanted to walk on the ground like a normal person anyways. With a small grunt he climbs up the stone back wall. He stays there for a moment before looking back at what was once his house. Mrs. Himiko, the whole thing was up in flames and Izuku didn't know if anyone had gotten out alive. He had no way to tell. He was just sad, not for losing a home. But for Mrs. who was such a strong woman to deal with a psycho and a quirkless kid. Who had built that place and sustained it by her own hands. Went through an emotional roller coaster every day. All her hard work would be broken down. But Izuku didn't even know if she was alive, so he didn't know what to think. If she died, then he would actually be a little glad that the orphanage burned down along with her. He didn't want another owner to come along and tarnish her memory. But if she was alive, then she would just have to rebuild. His All Might merch was slowly smoldering and melting away. It was sadistically satisfying to see that go up in flames. Although he would have sold it. It would have been the most useful scenario for the merch, but alas, that wasn't the case. He was glad that at least his weird fanboy addiction had been beneficial to his survival. The same couldn't be said for the hero he had idolized though. Obviously, that was not beneficial to Izuku's survival. XD, the heroes and firefighters were here. They too were focused on the fire and didn't see Izuku. With a heavy sigh Izuku turns and prepares for his journey ahead. Jumping from the back fence onto the tree that was conveniently positioned in front of the wall and then from there to the roof of the house. Izuku was running. Again. He was good at running. The man who had started the sudden fire. The suspect. No, the perpetrator was standing on the side watching. He had started the fire with a giant blast of blue flame from his palm. But he made it look like he was swatting at a fly. It was a good trick he had learned from Gamer Boy, a code name. He'd been taught to make part of his flame look clear. Or almost clear. The man had burnt scars everywhere and it looked like he was stapled together. With his blue hair and dark eyes, he watches as the fire slowly eats away at the orphanage where the target had lived. Ahahaha. He cackles mentally as help arrives. Heroes and firefighters spill out of cars and onto the street. The water-based heroes all shoot water at the house trying to quell the flames while the others evacuated nearby houses. Ahahaha. He continues cackling mentally. By his calculations and instincts, the fire would kill Izuku but not burn his body to ashes. Just like the doctor wanted. After all, the man had called for help. Izuku would be fine. In one way or another they would still be able to use him. Even if, by some miracle Izuku survived the fire, he would be immobilized at a hospital and that would still be an easy scenario for them to snatch Izuku. The man didn't consider the scenario where Izuku escaped the fire. After all, he was a quirkless boy. They were useless, right? 562 words, why this was so short. How to continue this part, so I just want you to know that it was originally 562 words. If by the time I add details blah 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 and it becomes 1000 plus words, well, you know that the bare bones was actually 562 words. Uwu. I managed to make it 2 more words. Yes, Izuku's POV. Izuku had escaped by jumping on top of rooftops. But before he left completely, he stayed a little watching. Waiting to see if Mrs. was alive or not. He stuck to the shadows on roofs of neighboring houses as he watched paramedics enter the burnt-down building that was once an orphanage. The heroes had finally been able to put the fire out. However, they arrived too late. Himiko was missing. Presum dead. Burned to the point where there were no parts of her left. But Mrs. was dead. They had moved her still body away from the house, and later the report came into the heroes in the area, over radio, that she had died. Izuku was the only one from the 3 that still lived. That he knew of. Maybe Himiko had survived. He was free. Even if that did come at a cost. He was officially dead in the books. Izuku had realized that if he'd cut off a piece of his arm and chuck it into the place where the fire burned the strongest, the front area of the house, he would be dead. Don't worry. It didn't hurt, and it was taped up so nobody could track him through his bleeding. Sometimes Izuku scared himself, just how smart he was. Izuku left behind the orphanage and his past life. By the time he'd completely left his area of Tokyo and started to look around, he realized that he didn't know what came next. What was the next step in his oh-so-brilliant escape from the fire and the Sushi villain plan? Currently he was standing in front of a large metro, subway, no, the trains, underground trains, not the bread sandwich place, looking extremely out of place. He was in his slightly singed clothing and looked really lost. Plus his arm was bandaged all the way up. To sum it up, he looked like a problem and trouble. Earlier in the day, he'd left his normal shoes at the front entrance of the orphanage. But those burned down. By some sheer luck, plot armor face with rolling eyes, he had taken his P.E. shoes home with him to clean. Now Izuku had shoes. One less thing for him to buy. Izuku stutters, standing in front of the information desk at the metro station. I'm looking for a place to live. Do you know where I can find cheap rent? The lady who sat behind the table and was typing furiously on her computer, doesn't even look up as she says, go to XXX place. Be careful though, it's not too safe around there. Izuku promised himself that he'd make it safe. After training, of course. Smiley face. Then he stammers, thank you. You're welcome, the lady says as she continues looking at her screen. She was typing a fanfic story for Wattpad. Izuku was surprised. He'd read many fanfics before about All Might. Yes, he had that fanboy addiction to his idol. As Izuku is turning to leave, the woman slides a can of soda towards Izuku through the small gap under the plastic divider. Take it. She says, you look like you need it. Thanks. Izuku says brightly as he takes the soda and starts walking towards the XXX place that the lady had mentioned. His childish, cinnamon bun act really worked. Though Izuku did feel bad to trick such a kind and nice lady. By the time he arrives at the location, he'd long finished the juice. Even if it was a short walk away from the metro station, he'd taken a while getting there due to traffic. He's going to keep the can though. He's going to commemorate this token of kindness. Remind himself what he's working for. What type of world he wants to help. Why he wants to help. He wants to repay all those who treated him well, although Izuku wasn't certain that he deserved such kindness. Did he really? When all the people who were kind to him, got hurt instead. The nurse 11 years ago, died in the same villain attack as his mother and the doctor. Although the doctor was not the kindest in the least. Mrs. was dead from another villain attack. It would be funny if this information's lady died in the footer dash. He didn't want to jinx it though. But if people who were nice to him they started dying like that, should he instead emit an aura that says, "Don't be nice to me, if you are nice to me you'll die," like that? No. He was going to be a hero. He didn't want anyone to be kind anymore. He would be kind in return. Izuku knew what it was to carry the weight of the world. He did it all the time, it was pretty normal by now. Izuku walks down the dark, it was getting dark, slightly dirty roads until he finds a decent, and not run-down apartment complex. It would be good enough for now. Izuku had money in his backpack. All those days he had spent working as a waiter at a cafe near the orphanage really paid off. Speaking of jobs, Izuku needed to get a job. While he did have a job at the cafe, Midoriya Izuku had died in the fire. He couldn't just randomly blow his cover like that. No. Izuku wasn't new at this. He walks through the lobby of the apartment and talks briefly to the old man at the window. The price was decent and Izuku agrees. Just put whatever price you think is decent, hugging face. The man's name was Makoto Kaito. Izuku would remember. The man did give him a sandwich. What was it with these nice people? They were making Izuku teary-eyed. He didn't want them to die, but he knew his luck, so he would train. Train to protect. To protect what's his. To what he owed. But yeah, he registered under a fake alias. A fake name. A fake identity. A fake quirk. A fake family. Simple, normal, nothing special. Izuku was pro at being fake and faking his fakeness after all. The name he had told the old man who owned the complex was Nejima Aoi. He would have to remember to hack the city records and create some fake files on himself. Things to do. Things to do. Things to do. He still had so many things he needed to do. 1070 words, guys, triple updates. What am I doing with my life? Obvi SMTH right, but anyways, it's been a long day and I was wondering, does anything feel off? Character. Comments in general.